Good morning. I'm WBTV First Alert Meteorologist Eric Garlick, and we've had a little bit of a break and a little bit of a change in our weather pattern as we went through the last week or so, just dealing with a lot of rain chances. One of the things we haven't talked much about is the tropics. They've been pretty quiet after Beryl and the records that a hurricane that was. Things became pretty quiet across the area, and we're going to be seeing that change. As we get into August and September, we start to see those chances for hurricanes increasing, and that's typically when we see hurricanes continue to develop and become more common as well. So on this episode of the First Alert, we're going to kind of talk about when we expect tropics to pick up and when we could see our next named storm. So let's jump into it, and we'll talk about where we're dealing with that activity right now. So let's take a look at hurricane season, the latest forecast from Colorado State University, and you may have seen this before if you tune into the First Alert. This is something that we've covered, so we'll take that full. You can see the latest forecast with the update coming in July, expecting 25 named storms, 12 of those to become hurricanes, and 6 of those to become major hurricanes. Now that does include the 3 named storms that we already do have or have had this season, and we're going to continue to see those numbers climb. So let's talk about when we typically see tropical storms and hurricanes and major hurricanes forming. Now we're entering the end of July, and you can see the progression from August to September and a pretty steep incline. Now the peak of hurricane season is September 10th, but notice those darker shadings that you do see at the bottom. That's when we typically see our major hurricanes and typically see when we just have an actual hurricane develop. So peak of that hurricane season comes in the first 2 weeks of September, but really start to see things become more active as we go through the month of August. And that's what we're kind of looking at right now. A lot of energy in the ocean right now. Sea surface temperatures running above average in the 80s and even mid to upper 80s across portions of the Lesser Antilles back toward Jamaica into the Yucatan Peninsula and then the Gulf of Mexico. How about those numbers near the Key West to 86 for those sea surface temperatures? That does provide a lot of fuel and energy for those storms. Now, as we take a look at what we can expect over the next week or so, this is what we're going to be watching. And if you are familiar with the tropics at all, you know that the Saharan dust is a deterrent for tropical storm activity and development. And that's what we're going to see. You can see that initial wave coming into the Dominican Republic, into Jamaica, and those areas as we go through the day tomorrow and into the weekend. But another impulse of that Saharan dust coming off of the Saharan desert, and that'll help hinder development as we go through the next week or so. Now looking 2 or 3 weeks out, we're in the middle of August at that point, and we'll start to see activity developing and becoming more common. So let's talk about what Saharan dust does to the tropics. So it's dry, dusty air that originates from the Saharan desert and will move out across the Atlantic. This will impact the development in a negative way. Tropical waves, they loft the dust into the atmosphere and then it just carries it west. Now this will suppress the tropical cyclone formation and intensification if anything were to develop and they had the dust move in over top of it. That will prevent it from getting too strong too quickly. It does also create some hazy skies and low visibilities and could impact your breathing if you are sensitive to those respiratory issues if that Saharan dust makes it all the way in our direction. Right now, not impacting us a whole lot, and the tropics are pretty quiet. The overview over the next 7 days, not expecting any development at all. But looking at week 2 and week 3, this is typically when we'll start to see that activity ramp up a little bit, and we'll show you what we can kind of expect. So this is an experimental product put out by by NOAA and the Hurricane Center, and this is really what we're going to be watching for. So between August 1st and August 7th, so we're looking at a couple weeks out, and as I mentioned, that is when we'll start to see hurricane season, typically, climatologically speaking, become more active. Now, there's a 20 to 40% chance of development across the Pacific, but also notice that 20% chance or so from the Lesser Antilles over there toward the Dominican Republic and in those areas. So those are the areas we're going to be watching as we go through the next couple of weeks, and something to keep an eye on. So we'll be watching that closely as we go through the next couple of weeks. Now looking a little bit further, this is August 8th through August 14th, with those 20% chances of development off the coast of Mexico in the Pacific, and then a little bit further eastward into portions of the Atlantic, a little closer toward Africa, and those waves coming off the coast of Africa could develop into something. So that is what we will be watching. Again, we do have 3 named storms already this year: Alberto, Beryl, and Chris. The next one will be Debbie when it does form and does become a named system. So really expecting the tropics to become more active as we head into August and then September as we head into the peak of hurricane season. So stay tuned for updates on that, and we'll keep you updated. Here's what we're expecting for today, though. Let's run through this real quick. Temperatures warming up into the low to mid 80s. Rain on and off likely as we go through the morning into the afternoon. Could see another round of some thunderstorms developing. Here's what Futurecast looks like. You can see those showers moving through this morning. Some embedded areas of some heavier rainfall will be possible. And as we go through the afternoon and into the evening, we'll see the potential for a second round of thunderstorms developing. Best chances along in southeast of I-85 during that evening time frame. It does have the possibility of 1 or 2 of these storms to become severe, especially across the eastern half of the Carolinas. Heavy rain, strong winds will be the main threats with that. Our excessive rainfall outlook, and this is what it means to you in these numbers and the wording. It's a 2 on a scale of 1 to 4, which means isolated to scattered reports of flash flooding possible across the area, especially in areas where we do get some thunderstorms to develop and some of that heavy rainfall to come down. Now, we do have a flood watch in a few of our counties: Stanley, Anson, Richmond, and Chesterfield counties, all underneath that flood watch that goes until this evening. And of course, that means there's the potential for some flooding in those areas, especially with those stronger thunderstorms. Let's talk about those rain chances for today. You can see the coverage pretty widespread. During the afternoon and evening, the thunderstorm possibility will go up, but this morning, just kind of talking about the possibility for some widespread on and off showers, some of them heavy at times, with those rain chances tapering off as we head into the weekend. Here's a look at that 7-day forecast, looking at those rain chances to continue for your Thursday. And then as we head into Saturday and Sunday, finally starting to see those rain chances dropping a little bit, down to about a 20% chance. But next week, back up to 30-40%, which is climatologically what we see the end of July, beginning of August, those 30 to 40% chance for those showers and thunderstorms, primarily during the afternoon. And temperatures up around 90 degrees, pretty close to average. Our average high this time of year is 90 degrees. All right, everyone, thanks for joining me on this episode of The First Alert. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, have a great Thursday.